Yeah, perfect, thumbs up. Well, thank you everybody. Thank you to UNE and thank you to the Parramatta Business Chamber for having me today. It's a real honour. I've been asked to be here because my little startup Village Hub is a member of the UNE's Smart Region Incubator based here out of Tamworth. And Sue Ellen mentioned in the Welcome to Country, you can actually see the little hometown where I'm from originally, Warriata. It's right behind her head there on the screen. And it's great to be coming to you today from the New England Northwest region of New South Wales. So I wanted to start with a little bit about me and my background. I've talked myself up quite a lot in that bio there, Sarah. I don't know if I can live up to that expectation, but I wanted to explain a little bit about how I went from being a high school English teacher to a political staffer and candidate, and now into the startup world. And I put it all down to a simple decision to take risks and to say yes when presented with frightening opportunities. Ever since I was a little girl, I've suffered from a pretty healthy dose of imposter syndrome. I've always put myself out there into leadership roles. I've loved being in school plays and talking to people, but it's something that's never come particularly naturally to me. It's something that's always been very scary, and I've needed that fresh shot of adrenaline to get up in front and talk to people, and it's something that always leaves me very nerve-wracked. Now I realise it's because even though I pretended my whole life to be an extrovert, I'm actually quite introverted. To begin, as I said, I grew up in a really idyllic lifestyle in regional New South Wales on a farm 50 kilometres from the nearest town, where I really feel that I had all of the opportunities in the world. When I left high school, I had ambitions to study law, and my law career lasted all of 7 weeks of my first semester at uni before I found that I was much more comfortable in a teaching degree. And I ended up becoming a high school English teacher, which was a career that I absolutely loved. I loved every minute of working with teenagers. I find them funny and I find them challenging, and they make me laugh, and I love that job. But 10 years ago, in 2011, I just returned from teaching abroad for a few years, and I was a bit of a career crossroads. Something that changed my life dramatically, and I wouldn't believe where I would be 10 years ago today, is in 2011, I made a New Year's resolution to just say yes whenever anyone asked me to do something that scared me or that challenged me. Within a year, I'd changed my career completely. I'd represented Australia in political exchanges in the UK, in China and Israel. I'd volunteered to run political campaigns and travelled across the country from Broome back to Tamworth and throughout Sydney as well. I even ran a marathon that year. And if you, like me, can barely put 2 feet in front of the other and struggle with the thought of running a few hundred metres, then I challenge you to join up with an amazing charity called Can2 that got me across the finish line of marathon and triathlons and half marathons and all sorts of things I've done with them. This year and the 10 years that have come after that have presented many different obstacles to me. Politics in particular was a really tricky area to navigate. I moved to Sydney for the first time. I was in my late 20s. I'd never lived in Sydney before, and I took on a really chance opportunity to work as a research assistant to a Member of Parliament in New South Wales. As you've seen, and particularly so in the last week, you know, working in state and federal politics can be a very blokey environment, can be very unforgiving for women. I always felt welcome there, but I definitely came across my fair share of obstacles, particularly when you do come across some men who have never been told that maybe they should say no to an opportunity, and it's their natural inclination to say yes to everything. An opportunity opened up to run for pre-selection in my local seat of the Northern Tablelands. And even though it scared the hell out of me, it was something that I said yes to doing. In the end, it wasn't successful. I came second in that pre-selection, but I learned a hell of a lot about what you have to do to be able to stand in the way, particularly of men who think that you can't do something. I became more heavily involved in politics. The political party I was involved with at the time, I became the chair of our Women's Council. We introduced quotas for the governing board of the party. which was very, very challenging and something that had never been done before. But it's all about getting to 50% of women at the decision-making table. And that's something that I find to be absolutely crucial in every job that I've ever had. If you want women to be involved, women need to be at the decision-making table. We trialled a whole range of initiatives to get more women to run, including Invite Her to Run campaigns, a Male Champions of Change activity, and various things that have been trialled and been successful overseas. We met with a lot of opposition from both men and women, and people who don't like to be challenged and don't like to change. And something that always frustrated me was the women in our political party who would be the first to say, well, we don't need quotas and we don't need special measures because we've never needed them before. And we don't want people to judge us and say that we were only pre-selected on the basis of a quota. So I was also, though, met with support from men and women, and that whole experience in politics made me realise that it's impossible to achieve any sort of change by yourself, and wherever you can, to surround yourself with mentors and to latch on to mentors, and it's only the power of the collective that will bring change. A few years later, the boss I was working for, a minister at the time, and I ended up working as a senior staffer and deputy chief of staff to ministers in both the federal and New South Wales government, was shuffled out of politics. And I got a phone call from the head of a large children's charity called Royal Far West, which is based in Manly in Sydney, but it's about country children, a charity that I'd worked really closely with. And she asked me to come on board and run her external and government relations team. So, thinking about it, taking a deep breath again, I made the decision to say yes, step out into the non-for-profit world, where I was faced with a whole new set of challenges. So, even though working in a non-for-profit, it's a great cause, and you think, yes, I'm doing this for children, and I love the cause very much. I was actually heavily involved in running a multi-million-dollar operation, responsible for partnerships, budgets, and generating a lot of funds. And that was something that I had no background or no experience in. So something that I've always done when faced with a challenge is to try and think, well, if I'm going to be an imposter and feel like I don't know anything in this role, how can I improve myself and work into the role? And I ended up enrolling in an MBA at the University of Sydney, supported by UN Women. My first day in that classroom, I was one of the older people in the class. I was in my mid-30s by this stage. I knew none of the acronyms. I had no business in law or banking or finance or anything that a lot of my cohort did. I found the whole experience really, really intimidating, but also one of the most wonderful things that I've ever done. And a couple of years later, a new challenge presented itself, which was when I was on maternity leave last year. I was asked through a mutual friend to come on and run a couple of her startups. So now I'm the managing director of two startups called My Property Circles, which is about bringing a collective group of people together to invest in property together as a group. And also our social enterprise, Bricks for Chicks, which is about providing matching funds for women to get into the property market if they can't because of their life circumstances. This actually coincided with a uni project, my last project at uni, which is the third startup that I now run, which is the reason that I've been asked to speak today, because it's the startup that's in the uni's Smart Region Incubator, and that is Village Hub. So Village Hub, as you can see, I've got my co-founders there, Andrew and Michael, began when a team of uni MBAs decided to turn our assignment into a business. We had a brief from the City of Sydney to come up with a solution for high street vibrancy. The City of Sydney was worried that if you're walking down Oxford Street or Glebe Point Road, it's not as vibrant and it's not as buzzing as it used to be or it should be. So what is really cool about starting a business that's actually an academic assignment is you get to start from a really pure place, and we started from a design-led thinking concept. So we interviewed hundreds of people, we walked the streets, and we asked people, what do you want to see that would make your high streets more vibrant? So what is Village Hub? So I ask you to think of Village Hub like Airbnb for underutilised high street space meets Eventbrite for local events. Basically, the point of the platform is to help open up underutilised spaces and make it easy for businesses to deliver unique events and experiences for their local community. To give you an example, post-COVID, we've got a bottle shop listed in Rushcutters Bay, and they have a wine tasting room that's rarely used. And since they've listed on Village Hub, it's been used several times for different events, including paint and sip nights, bringing local people together, where local artists and creatives can rent that space, which is really beautiful, for a really affordable price to run their events. And one of the ladies who's running paint and sip nights out of Village Hub venues is a graphic designer who lost her job as part of COVID. So we're trying to do what we can to bring creatives and businesses together to better utilise space when otherwise it would be closed and not bringing in any money for business owners. So we were able to build this business because we talked to so many people. We talked to high street users. We discovered what people wanted to see on their high street. We talked to small business owners who wanted to develop a greater connection with their customers. And we also work with local councils and chambers of commerce who wanted to find ways to support their local businesses and improve high street vibrancy. So as I said, it's a three-sided marketplace. It's very similar to Airbnb, but eventually we want to introduce that third side where you can book tickets to local events through Village Hub as well. So my challenge to you is that change in itself can be incredibly challenging. It's always easier to stay still and to stick with what makes you comfortable. But unfortunately, staying still means staying stagnant. If you and latch onto new opportunities as they're presented to you, I can guarantee you that somebody else will. So my challenge to you is to just say yes. The next time your boss asks you to take on a challenging job or a challenging role that you don't know that you can do, say yes. The next time a friend asks you, do you want to join me in my side hustle and see if we can make this business work? Just say yes. And the next time someone suggests that you might be perfect to put your hand up for a leadership role, don't say, well, maybe not me, but this guy over here. Say, yes, I can do it. Even if you have no idea how you're going to do it, I promise you, you'll figure that out later. It's a tiny word, but it might just change your life and everything about it for the better. In saying that though, I've been thinking a lot over the last week as I've talked to other women at work about their International Women's Day experiences. Remember to have the courage to back yourself to say no for something that's not a great challenge for you. So if you're the only woman in a meeting and the men expect you to be the ones to take the notes, just say no, someone else can do it. If you're asked to take on extra work that your colleagues who might be men wouldn't be expected to do, for example, if you're always organising the work birthday parties or the leaving dues for people, then maybe just say no, I'm not doing it this time. And, you know, a particular prime example, something that's been so disheartening to see the last few weeks, is if you're a woman and you're expected to take the blame and to fall on your sword in a particular situation if there needs to be a scapegoat, just say no. And we see that all too often in the political and business worlds, that the women will be the first to go when somebody needs to fall on their sword and, you know, a scandal has happened. And I wanted to leave you with this quote that I absolutely love. In the infamous words of the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg, women belong in all places where decisions are being made. But the only way we will get there is sometimes to force our way in. You need to actively seek mentors, and you need to actively be a mentor yourself. Look for role models who've paved the way, ask about opportunities, and then just say yes when they're offered to you. And this is my challenge to you. This is my challenge to change. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you. Thanks, Claire. That was really great and wonderful. And I had a question for you, but you answered it at the end.